It was a quiet evening, and I had just returned from my late shift at the hospital. My name is Sarah, and I am a 32-year-old nurse. Life had always been a series of routines for me, balancing long shifts at the hospital with quiet evenings at home with my husband, David. We had been married for 7 years, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I always believed we had a strong bond. But lately, things had felt off. David had been working late more often. He said his new project at the software company demanded a lot of extra hours. I tried to be understanding, preparing meals and leaving them on the table for him, even if it meant eating alone most nights. But the distance between us was undeniable. Conversations were sparse, and his once warm demeanor had turned cold and distracted. I told myself it was just the stress of work, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night, as I was finishing up dinner, I heard David's car pull into the driveway. It was almost 11 p.m. I greeted him at the door, but instead of the usual tired smile, he barely acknowledged me. "Long day?" I asked, trying to mask the hurt in my voice. "Yeah," he replied curtly, heading straight to the couch and scrolling through his phone. I noticed he didn't even glance at the meal I'd prepared. "Did you eat?" I asked, hoping to at least have a brief conversation. "Yeah. A colleague grabbed dinner for the team." "Sorry," he mumbled without looking up. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I replayed the events of the past few weeks in my head. David's late nights, his distracted behavior, his sudden disinterest in spending time together. My heart ached, but I couldn't pinpoint why I felt this overwhelming sense of dread. I decided I needed to talk to him, but finding the right moment felt impossible. A few days later, I received an unexpected call from my colleague asking me to switch shifts. Instead of the night shift, I would now be working during the day. I texted David about the change, thinking it was no big deal. Hours passed and I noticed he hadn't replied, even though he'd read the message. This wasn't like him. He used to respond almost immediately, often with playful emojis or sweet messages. But now, there was only silence. That evening, I decided to surprise him. I finished work early, stopped by the grocery store, and picked up ingredients for his favorite dish. It was cold outside, and I thought a warm, hearty meal might bring us closer. As I prepared the food, I glanced at the clock repeatedly, waiting for him to come home. When the clock struck 10 p.m., I started to worry. David usually came home by 8. When he finally walked through the door, I greeted him with relief, but his reaction caught me off guard. "You're late. Is everything okay?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Yeah, just some last-minute work stuff." "Sorry." I tried to smile. "I made your favorite dish. Come eat." "Oh," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Actually, I'm not that hungry." I grabbed a bite at the office. Disappointment washed over me, but I masked it. "That's okay," I said softly, placing the food in the fridge. As we sat together in silence, I noticed him fidgeting. Then, out of nowhere, he stood up. "I'm going for a walk," he said. "Now?" I asked, surprised. "It's late and freezing outside." "I need some fresh air," he replied, grabbing his jacket and leaving before I could say another word. I sat there staring at the door, feeling an uneasy pit in my stomach. Something didn't feel right. I decided to follow him, keeping a safe distance. As I trailed behind, I saw him walk briskly to the park a few blocks away. He stopped near a bench and pulled out his phone, glancing around as if waiting for someone. Moments later, a car pulled up. My heart raced as I watched David lean into the passenger window, talking to someone inside. It was hard to see, but as I moved closer, I noticed it was a woman. She had long hair and a warm, inviting smile. David got into the car, and they drove away, leaving me standing there in shock. I returned home, my mind spinning. Who was she? Why was he meeting her so late at night? My chest felt tight as a storm of emotions overtook me. Anger, betrayal, sadness. But most of all, I felt the need for answers. The next morning, David acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work, the same way he always did. But I couldn't bring myself to look at him. I decided to take action. After a quick online search, I found a private investigator and hired them to follow David. If he was hiding something, I needed to know. Days turned into weeks, and each day felt like an eternity as I waited for the investigator's report. Meanwhile, David's behavior grew more distant. He was either glued to his phone or working late. The once lively spark in our relationship had dimmed to a faint flicker. Then, one Saturday morning, I received an envelope from the investigator. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing photos and detailed notes. The evidence was undeniable. David had been meeting the same woman regularly. They'd gone to dinner, walked hand in hand, and even shared intimate moments. My heart shattered. That evening, I confronted him. "David, I know everything," I said, holding up the photos. His face turned pale. "Sarah, it's not what it looks like," he stammered. "Don't lie to me," I snapped, my voice breaking. "I trusted you." "Why?" He sighed, running his hands through his hair. "I've been feeling trapped," he admitted. "Work has been stressful and I made a mistake. But it doesn't mean I don't love you." Tears streamed down my face. "Love? You call this love?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You destroyed everything we built together." David begged for forgiveness, but I couldn't find it in my heart to stay. That night, I packed my bags and left, moving in with my parents. The pain was unbearable, but I knew I deserved better. Over the next few months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I poured myself into work, took up new hobbies like painting and yoga, and reconnected with old friends. Slowly, the pieces of my broken heart began to mend. One day, I received a letter from David. He apologized profusely, claiming he had ended the affair and wanted to make things right. But his words felt hollow. I had moved on, and there was no going back. In time, I found peace. I learned to value myself and embrace the strength that came from overcoming heartbreak. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine to rebuild. And for that, I was grateful. Moving forward, I began to embrace new opportunities. My job as a nurse became a source of pride and purpose. I joined a community group where I met supportive friends who encouraged me to chase my dreams. Among them was Rachel, a single mother who had also gone through a painful divorce. Her resilience inspired me, and together, we motivated each other to pursue personal growth. One day, Rachel and I signed up for a weekend retreat focused on mindfulness and self-care. The retreat was held in a serene countryside location, surrounded by lush greenery and peaceful lakes. The experience was transformative. I learned to let go of my anger and embrace the present moment. The exercises in gratitude and self-compassion gave me a newfound sense of clarity. On the last day of the retreat, we were asked to write letters to our past selves. As I penned my thoughts, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I forgave myself for the years I had spent doubting my worth. I realized that David's actions didn't define me. My strength and resilience did. Returning home, I decided to pursue something I had always been passionate about: writing. I began journaling my experiences and soon started a blog dedicated to helping others navigate heartbreak and rediscover themselves. To my surprise, the blog gained traction, and readers from all over the world reached out to share their stories. It was humbling to know that my words could make a difference. Months turned into a year, and I found myself thriving in ways I never imagined. My journey wasn't just about moving on from David. It was about rediscovering who I was and what I wanted from life. I traveled to places I had always dreamed of visiting, like Italy and Greece. Standing on the cliffs of Santorini, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had survived the storm and emerged stronger. One evening, while attending a friend's dinner party, I met someone new. His name was Michael, a kind-hearted architect with a passion for storytelling. We bonded over our shared love for books and long walks in nature. Michael was patient, understanding, and genuine, qualities I hadn't realized I was missing in my previous relationship. As we got to know each other, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Michael and I took things slow. He respected my past and never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and valued. Our connection grew stronger with each passing day, and I began to envision a future filled with possibilities. Looking back, I realized that my journey through heartbreak was a necessary part of my growth. It taught me to value myself, set boundaries, and never settle for less than I deserved. Life had a way of throwing unexpected challenges, but it also had a way of leading us to brighter horizons. As I stood in my new home, surrounded by plants I had nurtured and books I had collected, I felt a profound sense of peace. My life was far from perfect, but it was authentic and filled with love for myself, my passions, and the people who truly cared for me. And in that moment, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be.